My name is Harper Collins, and what I'm about to tell you isn't just the story of how I became homeless. It's the story of how a home stopped being a safe place and became the first weapon used against me. For most of my adult life, I did everything the right way. I graduated college with a degree in education administration, landed a job at a local elementary school in Brooklyn, and spent my weekdays managing schedules, supplies, and helping teachers coordinate student activities. The kind of job where your hands are always full but your heart is too. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment with my husband, Logan Reed, a structural engineer who worked for a large firm in Manhattan. Tall, clean-cut, decisive. The kind of man who knew how to make waiters nervous with a single raised eyebrow. He was charming when he wanted to be. The kind who could recite poetry and also fix the sink. When we met, I thought I had found someone stable, reliable, safe. I was wrong. The changes started slowly. Logan began managing our finances, first by taking over the bills, then consolidating our accounts, until I realized I hadn't logged into a bank portal in over a year. He said it was for convenience. I believed him. Then came the small criticisms. You're wearing that to work? Why do you need to call Rachel every day? She's a distraction. You know, I could cover our expenses if you just stayed home and helped me unwind. Little by little, the color drained from my world. I stopped going out after work. I stopped buying books. I stopped dancing around the kitchen to 80s pop when I cooked. And I certainly stopped questioning him. Because when I did, Logan's voice didn't rise. It dropped, cold and sharp like the edge of a knife. But the final straw wasn't the yelling. It wasn't the controlling. It wasn't even the isolation. It was the silence. It was coming home one night to find the locks changed. It was the email I received minutes later. I've removed your name from the lease. You're no longer a legal resident of this apartment. Please collect your personal items by Monday. No signature. No warmth. Just a digital execution of the life I had known. My phone service had been canceled. My bank cards declined. The account, joint until last week, was now empty. I later learned he had opened a separate one, rerouted everything, and left me 47 cents in checking. A reminder. That night, New York was in the middle of its first winter storm. I had a backpack with 2 sweaters, a journal, and $46 cash. I slept on a bench at McCarran Park, huddled under a broken awning, watching flakes settle on the pavement like confetti after a parade I wasn't invited to. I remember staring up at the sky and thinking, this can't be my life. This can't be how it ends. But it was real. And it was just the beginning. The next morning, I used the last few dollars I had to buy a hot coffee and a pack of tissues from a bodega. The clerk looked at me like I was shoplifting. I wasn't. But I was starting to look like I could. I tried calling Rachel from a payphone. She was in Philadelphia on a long-term education program. I didn't want to scare her, so I just said, everything's fine. That was the first lie I told someone since the fall. But the biggest lie I told was to myself. I kept thinking Logan would text me. That this was a mistake. That he would regret it. That maybe I deserved this somehow. On the 3rd day it rained. I wrapped my coat tight and found a spot near the edge of the subway station entrance. Warm enough to sit, hidden enough to not be chased off. Or so I thought. A cop nudged me with his boot and told me to move along. When I tried to explain, he didn't care. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a problem to relocate. A statistic with smudged mascara and an overused backpack. That night, as I lay down on cardboard behind a hardware store, I whispered to myself the only promise I could make that didn't feel empty. You will not die here. On day 5, I met Mabel Rivers. She looked like a retired librarian, and in a way she was. Once a literature professor, now a veteran of the streets. She sat near the park fountain with an old scarf wrapped around her head and a binder full of printed poems. You got that first night look, she said without turning to me. I'm on day 5. She nodded as if that meant something. Still hurts your pride? Yes. It'll stop hurting when you learn it doesn't pay your shelter fee. She didn't smile when she said it. But she did tear her sandwich in half and hand me the bigger piece. That was the first act of kindness I'd received in a week. And I didn't know it yet, but Mabel would become the compass I'd been missing. On day 7 I met Noah Kim. He was handing out bagels and fruit from a big red duffel bag. College kid, maybe 20, with 2 big glasses and a nervous kindness that made him stammer when he asked if I wanted water. Most people stared past us. Some dropped coins like we were wishing wells. Others turned their backs. But Noah looked at me and asked, "Are you okay? Not just, like, right now, but really." I don't know why, but I cried. In front of a stranger. With half a bagel in my mouth and wet socks. And he didn't flinch. He just sat down next to me and waited. That night, I found a spot near the library steps and thought about how easily Logan had erased me. From our finances, from our apartment, from his life. But I also thought about Mabel's sandwich. And Noah's question. And how even when the city didn't care if I vanished, 2 strangers had. I wasn't ready to fight back. Not yet. But I wasn't going to disappear either. And that was the beginning of everything. The first week on the streets taught me one thing. It's not the cold that breaks you. It's the silence. The way people pretend you're not there. Like your very presence is offensive. Like you being homeless is somehow contagious. I started to move through the city like a shadow. Learning which corners didn't attract attention, which store entrances stayed open late, which train lines stayed warm the longest. But I also learned something else. Kindness lives in the quietest places. That kindness had a name. Her name was Mabel Rivers. Every morning Mabel would find me first. Usually with some leftover food from a church kitchen or half a cup of black coffee she insisted I finish before it got cold. We didn't talk much at first. She wasn't one to pry. But slowly, in that way only older women know how to do, she chipped away at my walls. "You don't need to tell me everything," she said one morning, "but don't let what he did turn into your identity." I froze mid-sip. "How do you know about Logan?" Mabel shrugged. "I've seen enough women show up here with the same hollow look. Men don't always beat with fists, darling. Sometimes it's the silence, the power plays, the slow erasure." I didn't respond. But I didn't deny it either. There was a rhythm to surviving. Before sunrise, you find a public bathroom before they lock them. Then you check shelters. Maybe you'll get a cot, maybe not. If not, you walk. You keep walking so the cold doesn't settle in your bones. You stay near places with cameras. Not for security, but so someone might see you if something goes wrong. You don't trust anyone who asks for your name too quickly. And yet, amid all of that, Noah Kim kept showing up. The 3rd time I saw him, I was huddled behind a bookstore dumpster, rain dripping off the brim of a borrowed hat. He crouched down, held out a granola bar and said, "I brought an extra today just in case." I almost didn't take it. I was tired of pity. But then he added softly, "You remind me of my aunt. He helped raise me. Strongest woman I've ever met." Something about the way he said it, like strength wasn't gone just because I was in this place, made me reach out and accept the bar. We talked that day. Only for a few minutes. But it was real. Over the next few days, Noah started finding me more intentionally. He'd bring socks, lipstick, a travel toothbrush. Nothing expensive, but everything thoughtful. He didn't ask for my backstory. He didn't make me feel like a project. Instead he said, "I think it's wild how the world keeps turning while people fall through the cracks. Like, we built skyscrapers but can't keep one woman from freezing to death under them." I didn't have the words to answer him then. But I remember thinking, this boy gets it. Then came the afternoon at the deli. I'd been standing outside for about an hour hoping someone might buy me a sandwich. Most people ignored me. One man told me to get a job. Another woman clutched her purse tighter like I was about to grab it. But one lady, a mom with 2 kids, actually handed me a grocery bag and said, "I've been there." Inside, a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a small pack of baby wipes. I wanted to cry. Not from the food, but from the reminder that I wasn't invisible to everyone. That night I split the sandwich with Mabel. She smiled but didn't say thank you. Instead she said, "People forget that survival isn't just about food. It's about proof that someone still sees you." By week 2 I started trying again. Not to go home, that door was gone. Not to call Logan, that chapter was burned. But to find work. Any work. I cleaned the sidewalk in front of a bodega, hoping they'd offer me something. I offered to sort recycling behind a restaurant. I even asked the public library if I could volunteer, just to feel useful. Everywhere the answer was the same. "Do you have ID? Do you have a phone number we can reach you at? Do you have a mailing address?" Each "no" was another nail in the coffin society had already built for me. On day 15 I wandered back to the same market I had been avoiding, Shaw's Grocery, a small shop run by a man named Marcus Shaw, who looked like the type of guy who didn't believe in second chances. And I was right. He didn't. I asked if he needed help unloading the truck. He looked me up and down and said, "I don't hire strays." Cut more than I expected. I turned to leave, swallowing the words I wanted to scream. But then I heard a tiny voice behind me. "Mommy, why is that lady's face so sad?" A little girl no older than 5 was peeking at me from behind her mother's coat. Her mom whispered something in her ear, then looked at me. Our eyes met. And in that glance I saw something I hadn't in days: recognition. She didn't look away. She didn't pretend I wasn't there. She just nodded, not in pity but in quiet solidarity. That night I wrote in the corner of an old newspaper with a borrowed pen. "When one person looks at you like you matter, it makes up for 100 who look past you." 2 days later something happened that changed everything. I was sitting outside a coffee shop near Union Square when I heard shouting. A little girl had wandered into the street, chasing a balloon. Her mom screamed. A cab slammed its brakes. And without thinking I ran. I grabbed the girl by the waist and rolled us to the sidewalk just as the car skidded to a stop. People gathered. Phones came out. Someone called an ambulance, though neither of us was hurt. The girl's mom sobbed and hugged me. Someone offered me water. A man asked for my name. I didn't know what to say. So I just said, "Harper. I'm Harper." That night I was a headline. "Homeless woman saves child from traffic accident." The article went viral. Local news picked it up. The mayor's office issued a brief thank you statement. But more importantly, Marcus Shaw saw it. The next morning when I passed by his market again, he came outside. No scowl this time. "Harper, right?" I nodded. "I don't do charity. But I respect guts. Be here tomorrow morning. 5 a.m. You'll sweep the front, wipe down shelves. It's not glamorous. But it's a start." I nearly collapsed right there. That night I told Mabel. She smiled for the first time. "About damn time," she said. "You've been out here longer than most give themselves credit for. Now take that spark and build a damn fire." I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time since Logan locked me out. I didn't feel discarded. I felt seen. There's a kind of silence that happens before 5 a.m. in New York. It's not peaceful, not exactly, but it's honest. The streets are stripped of noise, pretense, performance. Just cold air, blinking streetlights, and the sound of life preparing to restart. That's when I arrived at Shaw's Grocery for the first time as more than a shadow on the sidewalk. Marcus Shaw unlocked the front gate without a word. He handed me a broom, pointed to the sidewalk littered with receipts and wet leaves, and disappeared inside. No introductions. No handshake. Just work. And that was exactly what I needed. I swept. Wiped windows. Unloaded a few crates of oranges and cucumbers. My fingers froze and my knuckles cracked, but I didn't complain. Every movement was a rebellion. A declaration that I was still useful, still worthy, despite everything Logan tried to erase from me. At 7:30, Marcus handed me a paper bag. Inside, a banana, a granola bar, and a lukewarm coffee. "No money yet," he muttered. "But you show up tomorrow, we'll talk." I showed up the next day. And the one after that. And the one after that. By the end of the week he handed me $40 in cash and said, "Let's keep it going." That $40 felt like $4,000. I took it to a corner drugstore and bought 3 things: a prepaid flip phone, a cheap notebook, and shampoo. That night, at a public shelter near Canal Street, I washed my hair for the first time in over 2 weeks. The water was freezing, but I didn't care. I scrubbed until my scalp stung and my lungs burned. When I walked out, towel around my shoulders, an old woman nearby whispered, "You look different." I smiled. I felt different. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus gave me more hours. He never smiled, never made small talk, but he always paid on time. He once caught a customer dropping a snide comment about letting street people handle produce. Marcus looked him straight in the eye and said, "You want sanitized hands or honest ones? Choose." The man left. I didn't. Noah Kim kept showing up too. He noticed my cleaner clothes, the way I stood taller, the way I laughed without flinching. One morning he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a list of local services: shelters, ID recovery programs, resume help centers. I stared at it for a long time. "I'm not trying to push," he said quickly. "I just thought, if you ever want to, maybe try." "Noah," I interrupted. "You're the first person who didn't treat me like I was broken. You've done enough." "But the list?" I folded it carefully and slid it into my pocket. Like a blueprint for a life I wasn't ready to build, but wasn't afraid to imagine anymore. Later that week, Rachel Grant came back. I hadn't told her anything. I didn't want pity, didn't want tears. But when I finally turned on my prepaid phone, I saw 19 missed calls and a flood of texts. "Harper. Please. Where are you? I'm coming home next weekend. Please tell me you're okay. Did he hurt you?" I called her from the break room at Shaw's, standing beside stacks of onions. "Rachel," I said quietly. There was a pause. Then sobbing. I'd never heard her cry like that. "I'm in the city," she finally managed. "I'm driving right now. Don't move. Don't disappear again." She found me at the market an hour later. No dramatic reunion. No hugging in the street. Just a long, silent look. And then Rachel pulled me into the backseat of her car, wrapped a coat around me and said, "Start from the beginning. I'm here." I told her everything. The manipulation. The lockout. The nights under train stations. Marcus. Mabel. Noah. The little girl in the street. Rachel didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she reached across the seat, held my hand and said, "You're not going back there. And you are not doing this alone anymore." We spent the next few days rebuilding. Rachel helped me apply for a new ID. She let me crash on her couch while I continued working early shifts at Shaw's. She even bought me a used blazer and a pair of shoes that didn't fall apart when I walked. We talked about Logan. I told her everything I had never admitted out loud before. The gaslighting, the money disappearing, the day he emptied our account and texted me, "Good luck." She said, "That's financial abuse, Harper." I laughed bitterly. "Is that what they call it when your husband makes you feel like a stray dog?" She squeezed my arm. "It's what they call it when men use power to erase women." One night, back at the shelter, I found Mabel sitting on the edge of her usual bench, reading a poem out loud to herself. She looked up and grinned. "You got a glow, girl. You're not dying out here anymore." "I'm working. Got a place to crash. Got a blazer." "Sounds dangerous," she smirked. Then she got serious. "Don't forget what it felt like. This hunger, this cold. Don't bury it. Use it." I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. But her words stayed with me, like seeds waiting for spring. 2 days later it happened. Marcus called me into the office. "There's a regular opening in morning shifts. $10 an hour. On the books. You got ID now. You want it?" I stared at him, speechless. He frowned. "Say something, Collins." I said the only thing I could. "Yes. Yes, I want it." That night I stood in front of a mirror and looked at myself. My reflection was still tired. Still healing. But for the first time in months I saw Harper Collins again. Not the woman Logan abandoned. Not the ghost under the park bench. Not the forgotten file in a shelter's drawer. I was a woman who woke up at dawn and worked. Who survived cold nights and colder silence. Who mattered. I didn't know that Logan was about to return. That he'd come back with threats and fake apologies. But I wasn't the same woman he left in the snow. And he was about to learn. I'd stopped being afraid. There's something terrifying about hearing your past speak your name. It was a Tuesday. Late afternoon. The store had just closed early for restocking. I was sweeping near the back when I heard it. A voice I hadn't heard in over a month. Harper. I froze. Even now, even after everything, his voice still had a way of making my lungs forget how to breathe. I turned. Logan. He looked the same. Pressed coat. Clean-shaven. Like the man who used to bring me flowers. Not the one who locked me out of our home like I was a stranger. What are you doing here? I asked, keeping the broom between us like a shield. He gave a small, rehearsed smile. I've been looking for you. My hands clenched. Why? You disappeared, Harper. You blocked me. No one knew where you went. I was worried. Worried. I laughed. Bitter. You cut me off. You locked me out. You knew exactly where I was. Nowhere. He stepped forward. Too close. Look, he said, lowering his voice. I made mistakes. We both did. But this can still be fixed. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. A lease, he said. In your name. A new apartment. Just yours. You can come back if you want. Or stay there. But let's just talk. Let's start over. Start over? After erasing me from everything? After leaving me with nothing but frostbite and a backpack? After watching me disappear and never once calling the police, a shelter, a hospital? It wasn't regret in his eyes. It was fear. Fear of what I might say. What I might reveal. I stared at the envelope like it was poison. You're not here to help, I said. You're here to shut me up. He flinched. But only for a moment. Then came the mask. The same one I'd seen so many times in our marriage. Careful, Harper, he said, voice flat. We both know what I could do if you start spreading things that aren't true. I stared at him. And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt angry. And I felt ready. That night I told Rachel everything. But this time I didn't cry. I told her about the envelope. About his threats. About the way his voice still sounded like ice behind velvet. Rachel, bless her, didn't waste time. We're going to the police. I have no hard proof. Then we find it. Enter Detective Grace Monroe. Rachel knew her through a former student. She worked in the domestic crimes division and had a reputation for taking invisible cases seriously. Women without bruises, abuse without scars. Grace met me in a coffee shop and listened without blinking. You have enough for financial abuse, she said plainly. But we'll need something concrete. Documents. Emails. Witnesses. I told her I had nothing. Logan wiped everything clean. But Grace only nodded. Then we'll get creative. First step. Rachel went through her old texts. She found screenshots I had sent her months ago. Complaints about Logan moving money, questions about our joint account access, photos of our shared lease with both names clearly printed. Grace marked them all. Step 2, Noah Kim. I hadn't planned to involve him. But when he heard, he was all in. I remember the day you told me what he did, he said. I remember your exact words. He wrote a signed statement. Step 3, Mabel Rivers. I wasn't sure she'd want to get involved. She didn't trust systems. But when I told her Logan was trying to rewrite my story, she grinned. Baby, I've fought bigger men than him with just a pencil and a pocket Bible. He wants to bury you. Let's hand him the shovel. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a letter. One I had left behind weeks ago. The last one Logan ever wrote me. Read. I've removed you from everything. You have no claim. No one will believe you. You're lucky I'm not making this legal. His handwriting. His signature. His threat on paper. It was everything Grace needed. A week later, Logan was served. Charges. Financial abuse. Document falsification. Coercive control. Threatening behavior. He tried to spin it in interviews. Claimed I was unstable, bitter, obsessed. But the community didn't buy it. Not after the article, not after the rescue, not after my coworkers Noah, Mabel, and Rachel all stepped forward with their truths. The trial wasn't flashy. No cameras. No headlines. But when the judge read the sentence, a conviction, a restraining order, mandatory compensation, I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. For the first time in months, the breath felt like mine. After the ruling, I walked out of the courthouse, the sky soft with evening light. Rachel was waiting. So was Noah. Even Marcus showed up, arms crossed, muttering, "Told you had guts." Mabel wasn't there. But I found a folded note in my coat pocket. Read, "You win one fight, it's not the end. But it's enough to start something new." And that's exactly what I was going to do. People think justice feels like fireworks. It doesn't. Feels like silence. Like standing in the middle of your own life again without needing to ask permission. That's how it felt when Logan Reed walked out of that courthouse. Not triumphant, not repentant, just exposed. And I walked out of the same building knowing something deeper than satisfaction. I had survived. And now it was time to build. The compensation wasn't massive. Just enough to cover the money he drained from our accounts, plus a small restitution amount. But for me, it felt like an investment into who I could become next. Rachel and I sat down with a notepad in her apartment that night. "What now?" she asked. I looked around the small kitchen where she'd let me sleep for weeks. And I said without hesitation, "I want to build a place for women like me." It started with a single idea. A center. Not a shelter. There were enough of those. A place where women could restart. Shower. Sleep. Be respected. Get IDs, food, a damn hug if they needed one. I wanted a place where women weren't asked, "What happened to you?" but instead were told, "You're here. You matter. Let's move forward." We called it Lantern House because sometimes the only thing you need when you're lost is one light in the dark. Noah came on board immediately. He had just graduated with a degree in community social work and said, "This is exactly why I studied what I studied." Rachel offered to run free art therapy workshops once a week. Marcus? He rolled his eyes when I asked for help. Then the next day he dropped off a van full of canned goods, folding chairs, and a new microwave. "Don't get soft," he grumbled. "This doesn't mean I like people now." We found a small building on the edge of Crown Heights. And used since the pandemic shut it down. The landlord, a widowed woman in her 70s, listened to my story and said, "My sister died in a shelter. If I can help someone avoid that, the rent is yours. Discounted." We opened with 3 rooms, 2 showers, and one goal, dignity. Our first visitor was a woman named Tanya. She was 28 with eyes that had seen too much too soon. She didn't talk at first. She just came in, showered, changed into clean donated clothes, and sat on the bench outside. I sat next to her. "You're safe," I said. "No one's asking for anything. You don't even have to say your name." She nodded, silent. The next day she came back. And the next. On day 4 she whispered, "My boyfriend burned my ID. Said if I ever left I'd be no one." I looked at her and said, "You are not no one. You're someone." We'll start there. Word spread. Women began showing up, exhausted, afraid, angry, numb, and I saw myself in all of them. The woman who'd been kicked out for disrespecting her husband. The one who aged out of foster care with no backup plan. The mother hiding from her past. The teenager fleeing a system that failed her. We helped them piece together their lives. Not with charity, with partnership. Mabel came by a week after we opened. She walked into Lantern House like she owned the place. "I'm not here to cry," she said. "I'm here to volunteer." She became our receptionist. If you can call a woman who quoted Maya Angelou at intake interviews a receptionist. She welcomed women with, "You still got fire, sweetheart. Let's find it." One day I found her crying in the stairwell. "I never thought I'd see a place like this," she whispered. "Not in this world." I hugged her. "Heart, you helped build it," I said. "You were the first woman who saw me." We hosted our first open night 3 months in. Food. Music. A wall of Polaroids showing the faces of those who had found their way through our door. Each photo had a word written underneath. Brave. Healing. Rebuilding. Worthy. I stood on a folding chair to give a short speech. I shook the paper in my hand. My voice shook more. "I used to sleep on train benches," I said. "I used to think I was invisible. Now I know, I was becoming." People clapped. Noah cried. Rachel took a photo of me mid-sentence, one hand raised, eyes bright with something stronger than survival. Hope. The city took notice. Lantern House was featured in a local newsletter, then on a small talk show. That's when I got the email. Subject line, "You probably don't remember me." I opened it. It was from the mother of the little girl I saved in the street. Back when I was homeless and nameless. She wrote, "I still remember your face. My daughter still talks about the woman who saved her balloon in her life. We didn't know how to reach you. We saw you on TV and I cried. Thank you. I hope you're okay now." I cried too. Weeks passed. The center grew. We secured a grant. A second building. We began training volunteers, creating a clothing donation room, helping with court filings. But no matter how big we got, I made sure every new woman heard this first. You are not your worst day. You are not what someone took from you. You are still here. And that means something. One afternoon I walked past Shaw's grocery on my way home. Marcus was outside, arguing with a vendor over pricing. He saw me. Gave a nod. "I heard the mayor's office is coming to tour your shelter." "They are. Don't let 'em take credit for what you built." "I won't." "You still coming to sweep the sidewalk when you get famous?" I grinned. "Only if you double my pay." He smirked. "Still got that fire." That night I sat in my new office. A real one with a desk and a nameplate that read Harper Collins, director. There was a knock at the door. It was Tanya. "I just got my new ID," she said, beaming. She held it up like a trophy. "I thought you should be the first to see it." I took it, stared at her face. "You're someone," I said. She smiled. "I always was. You just reminded me." That's the thing about justice. It doesn't just show up at your door. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks in the moment you stop waiting to be rescued and start rescuing others. And sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge or hold a gavel. Sometimes justice looks like a woman in a second-hand coat opening a door and saying, "Welcome in. Let's rebuild." There's a moment every evening, just after the sun slips past the rooftops, when the world turns gold. That's when Lantern House is most beautiful. Warm lights flicker behind the frosted windows. Laughter hums from the community room. And women who were once silent ghosts of the streets now sit in circles, sharing stories over tea and peanut butter crackers. Sometimes I stand outside and just watch. Not to admire but to remind myself. This isn't a miracle. It's a promise kept. It's been 1 year since the day I stood in court and faced Logan Reed. 1 year since the city that once ignored me whispered back, "We see you now." In that year, Lantern House grew from a whispered dream to a living, breathing haven. We've helped over 200 women, and counting. We've reunited families. We've helped survivors get jobs, IDs, apartments, and justice. We've handed out more hugs than I can count. But more than anything, we've given back names to women who were told they didn't matter. One of those names is Mabel Rivers. 2 months ago, Mabel got placed in a quiet assisted living home upstate, with a garden, a full library, and staff who call her Professor. She writes to us weekly. Sometimes it's poems. Sometimes it's life advice scribbled on napkins. Sometimes it's just 2 words. Keep going. We framed the first one and hung it in the entryway. Mabel was never homeless. She was home to so many of us when we had nowhere else to go. Noah Kim now works full-time at Lantern House as our outreach coordinator. He organizes donation drives, social service events, and most importantly our Saturday night story circle, where anyone can stand up and share a moment from their journey. Last weekend he stood up and said, "The strongest people I've ever met were told they were weak. That's why they became strong. They had to." I cried. He cried. We all cried. Then we danced to Whitney Houston until midnight. Rachel Grant, my warrior friend, my anchor, teaches art therapy 3 days a week now. She once told a room full of women, "This paint isn't just color. It's a place to put the hurt and turn it into something beautiful." She's planning to open a community arts wing at Lantern House next year. She says it'll be called The Quiet Room, where women can be loud with their healing even in silence. Me. I still wake up before the sun. Still sweep the front steps some mornings even though we have volunteers for that now. Sometimes people recognize me from the newspaper story or the interview we did for the city grant program. "You're the woman who was homeless and built a shelter, right?" I usually smile and nod. But what I really want to say is, I'm the woman who lost everything and built something better from the rubble. Last week something happened that reminded me of how far I've come. A young woman, maybe 22, shaking in an oversized hoodie, showed up at the gate. She didn't speak. She just stood there with a bag clutched to her chest and tears that refused to fall. I walked out and said what I wish someone had said to me all those nights ago. "You're safe now. You don't have to explain. Just come in." She did. And when she fell asleep in one of the beds, shoes still on, face finally still, I stood at the door for a long time. Because I knew. That was me. 1 year ago. And now I was the one holding the door. On the anniversary of our founding, I went back to McCarran Park, to the bench where I spent my first night as no one. It was early evening. Windy. Quiet. I sat down and pulled a small box from my coat pocket. Inside was the note Mabel left me. "You win one fight, it's not the end. But it's enough to start something new." I smiled. Then I placed a small folded blanket on the bench, along with a sealed granola bar and a handwritten card. Read, "I once slept here. But I got back up. So will you." Then I walked away. Not in shame. Not in fear. But in power. My name is Harper Collins. I was erased. Forgotten. Discarded. But I fought my way back. Now I build homes from broken hearts. And I light lanterns in the dark. For every woman still finding her way.